guys, I am so sorry, but Camille, who is my friend that was supposed to be joining us on Coffee with Shanda this morning for our morning show, had to go pick up her daughter from school who is sick, unfortunately. So she's literally at the school right now instead of being with us here on Coffee with Shanda. But we're rescheduling. I'm hoping that tomorrow or this week we'll be able to get her on Coffee with Shanda before the year ends. So for you guys who were excited about hearing Camille speak about how she was able to actually sell almost $2 billion on Amazon, which for me, I was like, wow, that's amazing. She's 40 years old. She's a beautiful woman. She's a wife, she's a mother. To be able to do that at such a young age is pretty extraordinary. So I wanted to dig into her mind in front of you so that you guys could see how does she balance her life out and how does she choose the specific areas to focus on so that she doesn't spin, and then what's she up to now. So I'm going to announce to you guys when she will be on with me. Unfortunately, she had to pick up her daughter. Unfortunately, she had to pick up her daughter from school because she was sick. So it's one of those moments that all mothers can't avoid. So I'm going to shift gears. I did not prepare content, so I'm just going to share something that opened up for me at about 1 o'clock this morning. So 1 o'clock this morning, I woke up and my good friend Lori Baggett always sends me different books and tells me chapters to read. And have you guys ever heard of Christine Caine, Unexpected? Have you guys heard of her? Leave fear behind, move forward in faith, and embrace the adventure. Christine Caine is an amazing author, an amazing speaker. She has a group called, I think it's called A21. Yes, A21, where they help, basically they help people that are being humanly trafficked in some of the worst areas in the world, like Greece, to basically rehabilitate their lives and go in and protect them and help these immigrants that are coming over and immigrating to get out of war. There's some crazy things that happen, like these people who are coming over with their children, and I actually have a desire to go and see for myself. These are the crazy things about when I read books like this. But these people are coming over, and because they're vulnerable and they're out looking for work, the human traffickers go on the beaches that they come into, and they go into the areas that they're vulnerable, and they poach their children, and they poach the women, and they basically put them into human trafficking. And in some areas of the world, it is like there's not really many laws to even protect you when something like that happens. And I think as a mother, like if somebody ever grabbed my child, I can't even imagine what I would do to them, right? It's like just the torment that would come inside you. Anyway, so Lori sends me this book, and I didn't know who Christine Caine was about a year ago. And she sent me one of her other books that she told me to read a chapter, and I ended up reading the whole book in a few days. Well, this is the same thing. She told me to read chapter 9. I'm now at the end of the book, and I was reading all night, and I'm so inspired looking at my life about what is the real meaning. I live in this world where yes, there's a lot of us women, but there's also a ton of men. And the men are driven to buy another boat and buy another house. And, it's easy to look at their 500 cars, well, like 7 or 10 or 12 cars, and be like, oh my gosh, I want that car too. And get caught up in the materialistic side of life. And I'm not even going to make the materialistic side bad, because I don't think it's bad. If you can afford it and you can drive a Rolls Royce, why not? I mean, I don't think anything's wrong with that at all. But the questioning that I have is the drive that causes you to get that wealthy, right? So, and that's the place that I was playing with myself this morning, going, Shanda, like, is your drive still clean? Is your drive still like meant for people, meant for helping people? And it is. And thank God it is, because, how can I say this in any more of a blunt way? There's just no need to push any harder. Like, there's no need for me to push any harder. If it was for anything else but to take care of more people and impact more people. And I couldn't come to you any more like in humility around this. But like I literally was thinking this morning when I was reading Christine Cain's book, and I'm like, God, I wish I had more time to go do these other things. Like, and I know this is a mindset, I know it's leadership, but it's like, I want to carve out more time to go help little children who are being abused and help that cause. And I have a desire to help human trafficking as well. And we raise like tons of money at my events and make a big difference in the world, but it still doesn't feel like enough for me. And it feels like I'm constantly being called to play a bigger game in humanity. And I know that I do that in business. I know that I do that in business. When you get the messages that I get on a regular basis with people who, you know, it's one thing to help somebody go from 1 million to 6 million, right? And that's awesome. But it's another thing to help somebody that lost their job and are trying to become an entrepreneur. And I'm not trying to make one better than the other, but there's a group of entrepreneurs who didn't know that they ever could be entrepreneurs. And when I've helped those people become entrepreneurs, when I've helped them manage their minds, and hopefully you grabbed our Cyber Monday and that type of stuff for our pocket coaching when we had it out there. I think there's still some links out there somewhere. But my point is that like when I can help somebody, quote unquote, normal, that didn't know that they could make it, manage their mind to realize that when you fall down or when you keep hitting a wall and nothing's working, like when Christine Cain started A21, this human trafficking company, you know, everybody told her when they did the financials to even figure out if the nonprofit would run, that it was just impossible. Like it wasn't even probable or hard. It was impossible. And she's managed to do this. And she tells this book, by the way, Unexpected, is not about her A21. She just happens to, because she's obviously really into it, there's stories that come out about it. That's the cool thing about being an honest influencer or leader, is that you actually are sharing the real things in your life versus the authoritative advice. There's a difference between advice and actually living a life. And that's the part that I was analyzing this morning. Like, how much am I living my life to the level that I could? But when I'm reading her stuff, her book about, you know, her husband, Nick, and her kids, and when she had a couple kids under the age of 3, and the travel that they were doing for, not only, she has a huge platform. I think she has, I don't know, over 800,000 people on Instagram. She has a huge platform and she speaks all over the world. We actually wanted to have her at Zone Event this year, which we did not have her at, but I would like to talk to her about being at our next Zone Event. Just to be a woman and be able to create what she's been able to create and still follow God and still be in shape and still be true to doing that type of work when she could have quit. Right? Like, I think like she's sharing this story, a piece of the book is sharing this story about how she had, you know, she didn't think she would make it so many times. And I think the new entrepreneurs, or the entrepreneurs that didn't know that they could be entrepreneurs, like they weren't born, they're building themselves as an entrepreneur. They weren't necessarily born as an entrepreneur. Sometimes question, like, when's it time to throw in the towel? When's it time to quit? And when I read stories like hers, and I'm like, what kept her going? Like, what had her go to that next level? And the piece that really resonated with me this morning was this piece where she said, she was sharing a story about how she woke up one morning and it was a really great morning. And, you know, her kids were out, like, with her husband. She knew they were doing something for Mother's Day, and she was, you know, giddy about it. And she went out onto her patio and noticed the sun, and she was just having, you know, those moments where you notice have you ever had this where you notice like the sun beam, like coming through a window or in nature, and you're just taken by it? Have you ever noticed? I mean, I've half a dozen times or a dozen times in my life that I've had that, where I've just stared at the sunbeam going, oh my gosh, like, it's a good day to be alive. So she's having one of those moments. And so she's in that moment. And then all of a sudden, she has this thought that she wants to call her mother, who had just passed not too long ago. And she picked up the phone to call her mother and realized her mother had passed. And she had all this deep grief and mourning that came out of her, like uncontrollably like, that's my son, uncontrollably healing through that process of losing her mother. And she basically heard God say, do you want to be healed? And she said yes, because the thing that she's realized is every time we go through some of our most painful or even darkest, I don't know if that would be considered a dark moment, like after her mom had passed quite some many months after, but it's definitely a deep moment, right? Where it hurts, it's painful. And she said, every time I go through stuff like that, God gives her a bigger platform, right? Like it's like she has more people to serve, more people to help. She's got more content than she could handle, because it's all this stuff is barreling out of her life, and she's becoming a stronger individual. But yet I see people stop all the time when things get, tumultuous. That's not even a word. I was trying to say a word. When things get chaotic or, challenging in their family, where, I've got Zach, we've got Zach, and we want other children. And we think about like how many sports Zach has and sports and singing. And then we have our life. And then I want to read my books, and I want to create content and video sales letters and help people and answer inboxes, and then date my husband. And it's cool when I say all of that, none of it feels like a have to or a hardness, but like you still want to do all of those things, but yet you still want to be actively engaged in your children's lives. And I see people stop because they are going through a hard moment, and they start saying things like, is this worth it? And, I wasn't having that conversation with myself this morning, is it worth it? I was having a conversation around, am I operating from the most meaningful place that I could be operating from? Do I have enough on the line, more than making money, more than the company running really well, more than our clients getting great results? And I think this is coming from the fact that I've hired a good handful of really strong leaders in HeartCore, which now space is opening up for me to reassess, how am I playing? And am I putting my life on the line for a meaningful enough cause? Or that's not even the right way to say it. Could it be deeper? Could I put more at stake? Could I do more with my life? Could I impact more people? Can I make sure that my life really makes the biggest difference possible? Because that's what's going to cause me and you to up level to that next level that we know is possible. And at the end of the day, it's really not about making more money. Once your money is past survival and you have more money than you really need, then it really does. I mean, there's an ambition that can pull you forward, but I urge you to watch that ambition and make sure that you've got a purpose to the end of making more money. Like, what's the jump? At one point, the jump was to buy my house, right? It was to build our house and to have a beautiful family in this house. And that was the purpose of making more money at one point. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't ever let anybody tell you that there is. But then it's like, how much money can I make that I can tithe? How much money that I can make that I can give more than my 10% tithe and give to charities like, A21, with Christine Kane, where I can write, huge checks to people who are being human trafficked. Or maybe I can't adopt every child on this planet, but maybe I can help them get adopted, or I can help them get an education. And by the way, I probably wouldn't send them to an education through school. I'd probably send them to an education through mentors. And not probably, I would. Unless somebody convinced me elsewise, because of the fact that after you get your basic understanding of math and English, even Google has stopped hiring people out of college. And so we just have to stop and realize, what type of a world are we living in? And are we playing a traditional role of like being a robot and making decisions based on a robotic history of what we think we should be living like? Like, I thought I needed to go to university. Come on, Shanda. Like, I knew right from the get-go that I wasn't supposed to be in university, but I still went. I mean, I still dated men in my past that I knew were the wrong men for me, and I'm happy to say that this year was probably my first year that I course corrected. I always say to our clients, money loves speed. I course corrected quicker than I've ever course corrected before when I was running down the wrong lane and was okay with failing. And being standing there and saying, I failed at this, right? I failed at starting this. I failed at attempting to build this. I failed. And being okay with that, And so I learned that this year that I want to get even stronger at that. But I see the benefits and I feel safe in that because I've learned it. So much like Christine Kane was talking about in her book that I, by the way, have been up since 1:00 this morning reading this book. And then my son got up at 3:30 and we just played together. Poor kid. I tried to put him back to sleep, but he wouldn't go back to sleep. But we played together and cuddled and laughed and just had a real great mom-son moment this morning. And now, my day is going to kick off where I'm going to take him to school and go out to see my friend Bedros and do his podcast and all of that. And I think to myself, there was a day when I would have woken up at 1:00 in the morning and I would have thought that was hard. I would have canceled coffee with Shanda because I would have been too tired. And I would have been all up in that conversation. Where today I'm like, I'm going to drive 2.5 hours to Bedros's office in the middle of the day, do a podcast with him, then drive 2.5 hours back. I actually might just hire a driver to take me so that maybe I can do some lives and some work in the car instead of driving. And then I'm going to wind down my year. I'm going to try and get a Kimmy back on to talk about Amazon. Wednesday, you have to be on Coffee with Shanda on Wednesday. I'm winding down this week, so there won't be any more Coffees with Shanda after this week until next year. So tune in every day, but definitely tune in on Wednesday so that I can share with you one of my greatest motivators, a guy that when he speaks, I just believe. And I create incredible results. He definitely has a knack for being able to get inside your mind so that you can manage your mind for weeks and weeks and weeks after you listen to this guy speak. So definitely tune in Wednesday. But I want to urge you to look at what do you think is challenging. And if you're not going through it, you probably aren't connected with why it's worth it. And I encourage you to figure out why it's worth it, because as you start handling the things like lack of sleep. I'm sure I'm going to feel tired at 4:00 this afternoon. I'm sure I'm probably going to go to bed probably at 7. but the truth is that, I've already been up for 6 hours and I don't feel tired. I feel very much on purpose. And there was a day I would have felt exhausted and wouldn't have followed through on a Coffee with Shanda. So here's to all of us, becoming more aware of our energy, more aware of our meaning, and just really having things that we're working on that mean something to us to pull us through versus the chasing after, things are better, like that whole concept on the grass is greener on the other side. People do it with business strategies all the time, with coaches all the time, with relationships all the time. I'm telling you, it's like Larry Winget says, you really are responsible for your own results. And so if you're not getting the results that you want, I'm going to tell you, check into the meaning and then check into how often you're chasing a new strategy to succeed. All right, you guys, I will end on that. And I'll talk to you soon. I'm about to do a prayer circle with my girls at 7:30 and then take my son to school. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.